while others liked working in pairs or with a friend. With 30 students in a class and so many different language proficiency levels, interests, and motivations to learn English, I had to do something. So student choice was my go-to strategy. So now it is your turn. Please answer the following questions we have here on the screen. Where and what level, maybe primary, high school, college, adults, are you teaching? What level are you teaching? And what do you hope to learn from this session? I'm curious to hear more.
Yeah, me too. I'm curious to hear more too, Elena, from our wonderful audience. So please, everybody, let us know in the chat what country or region, as well as what level do you teach? And also, what do you hope to learn from today's session? We'd love to share out. So let's see, Elena, we've got some comments coming in. We have Rosetta in our chat saying that she teaches 38 students in grade 11 or high school. Another teacher, Olkar, is saying that they hope to learn some things from today's session to allow their students to be more flexible. I'm also looking over here at the chat. We've got teachers from all over. We have Valentina from Russia. She's teaching to primary students. We have Azran, who teaches undergraduate and postgraduate levels in Bangladesh. And they comment that learners' choices to learn language through literature. That's great. We have some other teachers saying that they teach middle school. We have a teacher from Azerbaijan in Baku that they teach at the university between ages 17 and 23. We have a teacher from Israel who teaches elementary school. I'm seeing a teacher, Mel, from Argentina, who teaches adults. So as you can hear, Elena, we've got teachers from all over the world that teach at all different levels, from primary to university to adults. So as you can see, we've got wonderful, wonderful teachers in our audience. Everybody, thank you so much for sharing. Please let us know what you learn from the session as well. So back to you, Elena.
Yes, thank you all very much for sharing, and Chris for helping me with the answers. I'm really excited to have you all attend today. I think the session will help you and some of the questions that you might have. Remember, this is a 1-hour session, and we could take a whole day to chat about student choice. But I promised you that I will try to share as much as possible with you in the amount of time we have together today. So let's start with our first goal or objective for the day, which is to discuss the benefits of having choices in the classroom for your students. As I said earlier, when I shared about my own classes and my students, most likely than not, that means most times, we have multi-level, heterogeneous, diverse group of students in our classes. Some aspects that students can be different on are, but not limited to, language proficiency levels such as beginner or intermediate. As I mentioned earlier about my class, some students knew lots of words and expressions from games, videos, and social media, while others could not understand a short dialogue. Interests and or hobbies. Some of my students were super interested in soccer and the World Cup, but others did not really care about that. Some students were huge fans of art, as I mentioned, and wanted to become artists. Others did not want anything to do with art. I had students who knew all about different types of cars, and students who did not even know what car their parents or neighbors had. Reasons or motivation to learn English. I had students who wanted to learn English so they can pass an international exam, such as TOEFL or IELTS, to study English at the university. I had students who wanted to learn English to understand all English videos about cars. I had students who just wanted to pass the class and get a decent mark or grade, and that was all. In terms of preferences, some of my students like to work alone by themselves with no peer, while others liked working in pairs or with a friend. So now that I share a little bit about my diverse or multi-level or heterogeneous classroom, it is your turn to give examples of how your classrooms are multi-level or diverse or heterogeneous. When you share, please include any of the following that I used to describe my students earlier. Their language proficiency levels, their interests or hobbies, their reason or motivation to learn English, and their preferences of how to work.
Yes, everybody, let us know. Elena gave us some great examples. You can see there on the right. But as always, we would love to hear from you. So please share some examples of how your classrooms are diverse or multi-level or heterogeneous. And exactly how do you do that? Are they because of language proficiency levels, interests, motivation, or preferences? We'd love to hear from you. And Elena, while we let our audience write in the chat, I just want to share a previous comment from the earlier slide. People are really excited to learn today, and they're learning to hope how to increase motivation with their students through choices. So that's great. We've got another wonderful comment coming in from Rosetta from Guyana. She says, thank you so much. This is a very interesting topic. And as a teacher, she finds that the psychology subject is very intertwined with English language. That's very interesting. Let's see. So some other teachers are now sharing the responses about examples of their classrooms. We have a teacher saying that they teach in a homogeneous classroom with different proficiency levels. Looks like lots of teachers are teaching, from an A1 to a B2 level in a speaking class. Many teachers are saying that their classes are multilingual. We have Sasatana saying that they teach beginner and intermediate. We've got teacher Mama Y saying that they also have beginners all the way up to the IELTS level. We have Yab Yusawai saying that they teach larger classes. And the one thing that they hope to learn today is about giving students a variety of activities based on their learning differences. I like that. And then just some other really interesting comments, Elena, our teachers are teaching on all different diverse classes from multi-level groups, of course, students with different interests. And, one teacher is, hey, my students aren't necessarily motivated while others are. And I'll share a couple more comments from Saira Rafiq says, my students used to watch dramas and videos, and some like to watch documentaries. They learn English to pass the exam, and some wanted to go into that field. So she thinks that they prefer to work in groups. That's really interesting. Let's see. So yeah, lots of teachers are saying there's lots of diversity in their classes. One teacher saying the diversity is great because their school is in a community-based school and people from different regions and backgrounds come there. That's really interesting. Lots of great responses, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you all very much for sharing, and I'm glad to hear the different shares and to learn about your context and your students. It sounds that all of you can identify very well and share how multi-level or diverse or heterogeneous your classrooms are. And I think the idea of student choice will work well for all of you. So let's talk more about choice and student choice. We all like to have a say in some aspects of our lives, wherever we can, of course. Maybe we want and appreciate when we have a say and have choices in what we eat, how we get to school or work, and what to wear for the day. So do the students in our English language classrooms. They want and would appreciate some say and choice in what is going on in their classroom. If students have a say in what happens in the classroom, they might be more likely to be engaged, involved, and motivated to do the work. If they can choose one activity or another, they will have some sense of ownership. They feel like they can make choices, and thus they will more likely be engaged, involved, and motivated in the English language classroom. So now let's review some examples of implementing student choice in the classroom. As I mentioned earlier, when I shared about my own classes and students, most likely than not, that is most times, we have multi-level, heterogeneous, diverse group of students in our English language classroom. Some aspects that students can be different on are, but not limited to, as we mentioned earlier, language proficiency levels, their interest or hobbies, reasons or motivation to learn English, and preferences. We know from research that language learning takes different paths. No student learns English the same way and in the same amount of time. Each student is different, and due to a variety of reasons, such as time spent using or studying English, motivation, and or engagement, each student learns differently. With such diversity and variety of levels and preferences, the idea of providing student choice will help you support more of your students in their learning. The idea of student choice in the classroom is part of a larger concept and idea in teaching, which we call differentiation.
And Elena, if you don't mind, I'd love to share a comment from our audience before we move ahead, talking
Yes,
about
please.
talking about motivation. One of our teachers, Moises David Chavez, he has an interesting comment just saying that motivation varies from student to student. He sees in that some of his students, they might feel forced by their parents, while others, they're not really motivated to learn. So I think today's webinar will give Moises some instruction and some guidance and tips on how to go against that. So I just wanted to share that nice comment from our audience.
Yes, thank you very much for that. And that's a very good comment and is connected to what you can do in the classroom. You cannot control what is outside of the classroom, but what is in your classroom, that is something that we are in charge of. So yes, thank you so much for sharing that. So we can sometimes think of the student choice in the classroom more like a menu style with a main dish, choice of side dishes, and choice of dessert. The common goal or objective of a menu is that we will all have a meal, we will all eat something, but based on how hungry we are, we might or might not get dessert, or based on our food preferences, we might pick different things from what is offered. The same with the choices we offer. We want all students to reach the same goals or objectives, such as we want all students to work on their reading, but we might give them some choices. Very important. We do not need to give a choice for everything. That is why the menu style example helps. Students have a choice only in the side dish. They all have a main dish and they can pick if they want dessert or not. So, based on students' English language proficiency levels, we can give or provide them with choices in terms of what students do, their activity, or in terms of materials or the modality. Thinking of my 8th graders that I mentioned earlier, the beginner students can watch a video about the tropical forest, while the intermediate students can read about the tropical forest from our textbook. I can also give them choices in terms of the materials or modalities. My beginner students can create a poster with words and images about the tropical forest, while my intermediate and more advanced students can actually write an essay. I wanted to share an example with you in which the choices are aligned or get to the objective of the lesson or with what the students need to work on. Maybe they need to work more on gathering information this year. They really need to learn how to do that this year. So the objective is gather information about Serengeti National Park in Tanzania. And I want to give students choices in terms of materials based on their language proficiency. So the materials are books or website, podcast or recording, or a video. So my students who are more intermediate in reading can choose to read the book or the website. My students who are more beginner in reading might choose to listen to a podcast or watch a video. All students will end up gathering information about Serengeti National Park, but they have a choice of the material they will use based on how confident they feel or are in their language. Based on students' interest in hobbies, we can allow them to pick the topic. So remember, I said some of my 8th graders were super interested in soccer, while others were more interested in art or cars. So if I want all of them to make a presentation, I can allow them to pick the topic from a list of topics, and I will make sure I will include topics related to soccer, art, and cars. Art and cars, since I know these are some topics and interests my students have. We also can allow for choices in terms of how students prefer to work or learn. I want all my students to read a text about the tropical forest, but they can choose how they will read based on their preferences. Maybe they want to work alone or with a partner or in a group or on the floor or at their desk.
And Elena, we've got some more great comments coming in. If you don't mind, I'd love to share them out with you and the audience. So yeah, we have a comment from Noor Shazadi saying that student choices should be given more importance than anything else. Okay, that's great. Then we also have Marlene Doric Acosta says, we have multicultural learners in our school because there are different groups of people in our place. So we employ differentiated instruction and activities. That sounds great, Marlene. Sounds like you're doing a great job there. And then we have Abdullah Wazira Bahin says, definitely, totally agree with you. It is tough for a teacher to deliver the lesson based on each student's wishes or desires, but the professional and the experienced teacher knows how to handle and how to deliver the lesson based on each student's desires and needs. Great comments, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing from your own context. I really appreciate that. We can continue with more examples and see if these, are useful to you. So here's another example of choices. So again, based on the goal, the objective and the goal in this example is to read and then summarize the text. Also, I know this year my 8th graders really need to work on their reading and summarizing as well. So based on their interest or hobbies, the students can pick the topic of their reading. They can read something related to soccer, maybe such as soccer history or famous soccer players, or I can also provide them with text about art, such as maybe history of art or famous artists. They can read about cars, depending on what text I can find, of course, and they can read maybe about the history of cars or car engines. They will all read, and then they will need to summarize, which is something they need to be better at and work on this year, but they have a choice in terms of the topic. Also related to their reason or motivation to learn English, which is something that some of you mentioned in the comments, I can allow the students to pick their topic or the activity they do or the materials they read or listen to. Here's one example. So here the goal or the objective is to listen to a podcast or a video and identify the main points or ideas. Also, listening seems to be overall the skill in English all my students need help with. Listening without having any text or images to identify main points or ideas is hard for my students. I remember it was hard for me when I started to learn English, and I'm sure you can relate to that too. So based on their motivation, the students can pick the topic of their podcast. Some students might want to learn English to be able to read and listen to news in English, so they can pick a podcast about current events. Some students might be motivated to learn English to study economy in an English-speaking country. So they will probably pick the podcast about the economy. Some students might be motivated to learn English to pass an exam. So they might pick the podcast about an author. So the topic, the activity, the materials, and how and where students work can become choices in the classroom. We can allow them a choice of topic, as I said, based and thinking of my 8th graders, soccer, art, or cars. We can allow them a choice of the activity. They can read or they can listen, or if we want them to share, they can write an essay or have a presentation. We can allow them a choice of materials. They can read a book, a magazine, a website, or they can listen to a podcast or to a recording. We can allow them a choice of how and where to work, alone or with a friend, at the desks, or on the floor. Now it is your turn. I want to hear more from you. Please give examples of which of the choices you find might be easier to implement in your classroom. Is it the choice for the topic, or maybe the activity, or maybe the materials, or how and where they work? What is easier for you in your context? Maybe you have a strict curriculum. Maybe in that case, would the choice of where and how students work would be easier for you? I want to hear from you all. I'm curious.
Yes, me too. I'm curious too, everybody. Please let us know what types of choices would be easiest to implement in your classroom, given your teaching context. Elena gave us some great ideas, whether it's based on topic, activity, maybe materials, how and where they work. So what is easiest for you? We'd love to hear from you. So let's see, Elena, we've got some comments coming in. Michelle is saying, easiest for her are topics and using different activities. That'd be great. We'd love to hear the types of different activities from everybody too. And then we also have Sylvia Van is saying materials and materials that they use and the preferences, the how and where the students work. Let's see. Carolina Tadek Gallardo is saying the choice of topic. Sia is saying activity. We have Alio Diata is saying that in their context, they use topics and activities. So lots of great things. Let's see, we've got some more comments coming in, Elena. Some just nice general comments saying that these examples are really well framed. Thank you so much for sharing. We have Mansour Dafe is saying, listening is very challenging, but is very practical and efficient to acquire language notions. So true, Mansour. And we have a question here from a teacher in Saudi Arabia, Mohammed Assad Hussein, saying, what to do if students who choose video and audio materials outnumber the available devices? What would you recommend with that for Elena if the students choose video and audio and there's not enough devices? What would you recommend for that?
That's a wonderful question, and thank you for sharing. Again, you are the expert and you know the context very well. I would say I would be very upfront with the students and say we have a limit of devices in the classroom. And I would like, if there are students who haven't had a chance to use them before, I would encourage you to let some of your peers. So I would be very upfront with the students, share with them there's a limited number of devices and encouraging new students to pick those. If that doesn't work, I know it will not be a choice, but sometimes you can assign and say, today I want these students to use the devices. But again, you know your context better. I'm just having two things to offer to you, and I hope those help.
That's great. Yes, I think that totally helped. I'll share a few more comments about which our teachers think are the easiest for them to choose. So lots of teachers are kind of selecting all of them, from activities to materials. So some great conferences. We have Anita saying preferences and activity are easiest for me. Sometimes we are limited to using the textbooks, so a topic might be restricted in their case. So yeah, we've got lots of wonderful comments. As you know, Elena, our teachers all teach in varied contexts and around the world. So it all just kind of depends where they're teaching. But thank you so much, everybody. Lots of great comments. We'll be sure to get back to them later. Thank you so much. Let's see, Elena, let's go back to this awesome menu style.
So we talked earlier about how we can think of student choice in the classroom as a menu. Here's another visual of a menu style. All students have the main dish, but some might pick the rice for their side dish and skip the dessert, while others might get both the rice and the dessert. As noted earlier, we want all students to reach the same goals or objectives for the lesson, or we want all of them to be better at their listening this year, as we mentioned earlier. And we give them some choices in the class, but we do not need to give a choice for everything.
And Elena, I'm sorry, I think I maybe have jumped ahead a little bit. Would you like to go back one slide too? Because I think there's some more questions. Would that be okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so our wonderful audience, they shared lots of their context, and I'd like to reflect on some of my teaching. So I have lots of students who are really interested and love ancient history, while others are really passionate about space travel. So when I'm planning a reading or writing lesson, I can give my students an option of reading or writing either about ancient history or space travel. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I think I understand, but I'm just a little bit confused between the choices in the activity and the choices in the materials. Can you explain that a little bit, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that question. So indeed, sometimes an activity such as reading requires a text, which can be a book or a website, which is a material. So I just want to share some examples. I will share one example of choice of an activity. So you can read about history of cars, and you can watch a documentary about the history of cars. Here I gave the choice of activity. You either read or you watch. The topic is the same, but the activity is different. You either read or watch. In terms of the material, you can read a book about the history of cars, but you can also read from a website. Here, I kept the activity reading the same, but I changed the material, which can be a book or a website. I hope that helps a little bit with that question.
Yeah, it totally helps. I got so excited from our audience sharing about different examples. I was like, I need to take advantage of having you here and ask you a question too. So yes, that certainly helps. Thank you so much.
Of course, yes. So here's an example of how to implement choices using a menu style in the classroom. So we have a main dish, a side dish, and dessert. The goal or objective for the lesson is to talk about past events. This can be the very specific objective of the lesson, or maybe a group of lesson, or in general, your students need to be better at using past tense or talk about past events. So the main dish is something everyone completes. Side dish, the students have a choice. The two choices are similar, and both ask students to talk about past events to reach the same objectives. Dessert is something nice to have, but not required. And it actually asks students to talk about future events, not past events, something they went over in a past or previous unit, and I want them to remember that. Here's another example. So we have, again, a main dish, a side dish, and dessert. The goal or objective for the lesson is to summarize a text. The main dish is something that everyone completes. Read The Tallest Mountain on pages 10 and 11 from your book. The side dish, the students have a choice. The two choices are similar, and both ask students to share or summarize the text. Some will use the questions, and some will share without the help of questions. Dessert, again, it's something nice to have, but not required, so it can be related or not to your objective for the day, or related to something else students need to review. In this case, it was asking them to think of a question about the text. Your turn. I want you now to think of your classroom and the lesson. What would be your objective or goal? What would be your main dish that you want everyone to do? What about 2 side dishes students can pick from and an optional dessert? I provided you here with an objective, which is summarize a text. I also shared the main dish and the dessert. So for the side dish, I have 2 options, A and B. Remember the objectives of the lesson, which in this case is summarizes text. Your activities need to be aligned and matched to that to help students with summarizing the text. So Chris, I'm putting you on the spot. Which option do you think works best here and why?
Okay, so I think the best option is option A, because it looks like it is the same as the objective to summarize a text. Is that correct?
Yes, you got that right. Option A is by far the one you want to include, as it matches the objective or goal of summarizing the text. Option B is not bad, just not for this lesson, because it is not related to summarizing a text. So think of your classroom and a lesson. Let's say your objective for the lesson, and again, or in general for you students, is to write formal or professional emails, like emails to their teachers. The main dish for the students will be to write an email to a teacher in which they ask about a future test. Now, Chris, let's think of 2 side dishes together. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, so all students need to write a formal or professional email, so they all get to work on their formal or professional writing. Do you think the 2 side dishes need to be connected at all with our objectives, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I would think that they do need to be connected. But I have a question. Do the students, do they get a chance to edit or modify or correct the emails that they wrote to their teachers or in a formal setting? And how can we incorporate that into their side dish?
Yes, we could definitely incorporate that into the side dish. As mentioned earlier, remember some of the students, for example, like to work alone, while others like working with a peer or a friend. One dish can be students using a checklist to check the format of the email, while other students might exchange emails with their peers and check the format that way. What do you think of that?
Ooh, I love that idea. I really like that, Elena. Great advice. That's awesome.
Good. Now, a question to our amazing teachers and audience today. Can you share with us a dessert menu option you could include for this activity? Remember, the dessert can be aligned or related to the objective, or can be something else related to a lesson or a topic you did in the past. I'm curious to hear.
Yes, I'm curious to hear too, everybody. So what dessert option would you give? So Elena gave us a great example of the main dish, to write an email to the teacher to ask questions. We have a side dish. What do you guys think? What type of dessert menu option would you choose to include for this activity? We'd love to hear from you. Let's see. We'll give our teachers a few moments to think about a dessert option there. I'd love to share everybody. Let's see. Some people are saying this really depends on yours and the student's personal preferences, really, to kind of understand what they're interested in. So you really have to ask students on which topic, they're most likely to focus on. Another teacher saying that they like to have an optional dessert, be the teacher and write a reply. Ooh, I like that, kind of like a role reversal, where the student will write a reply. That's really interesting. Let's see, we've got for the dessert, Edison Santa Cruz says that for dessert option that students can write questions for their peers as the dessert. Ooh, I like that. And then we also have Noor Shadzadi saying just a comment saying, Maybe they'll focus on gratitude, and that gratitude should be in there because it's a professional email and it will help the students grow professionally. I like that. Some other teachers out there in our audience are saying, instead of emailing your teacher, let's email a friend. And then, I like this one. The dessert option from Kursos says, write the desired response from their teacher. We have Farida Husinova saying some kind of extension task or activity. We have Faraz saying perhaps dessert could be a homework. And Elena, if you don't mind, we do have a couple questions too, if I may ask.
Yes,
So
please.
just going back to option A or B on a few slides previously, a teacher's curious why A was better than B. I know you kind of answered that B might work, but it didn't fit the objective. But if you wouldn't mind kind of explaining that, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. So when you offer the students choices for the side dishes, you want those side dishes to be activities or work related to what you wanted the lesson to be on. So for us, in that example, we wanted students to be able to summarize a text. So we wanted, when they picked an activity, to be something that helps them with summarizing the text. Option B, those were good activities for students to have, but they were not necessarily connected to our lesson, to what we wanted to teach them that day or that week. So with the menu style, it is very important that the main dish and the side dish, they are aligned. They help the students with whatever your goal or objective for them is for that lesson or for that unit. I hope that helps, but thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's great. I think it totally did. And before we move on, I'll just share a couple more comments about the dessert option. The teachers are really loving your style, this menu style, and I think are playing with the dessert options and are getting really creative. We have the best audience and best teachers. So some teachers are saying it depends on the student's appetite. Maybe they have a sweet tooth, maybe they like chocolate, maybe they like cheese. So it really kind of depends on the student's personal preferences, since it's optional. Teachers are talking about cravings. So they hope to satisfy the main dish, and the side dish by giving that option to the students. Wonderful comments, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And I hope the menu style is an easy way to think about choices in your classroom, while also making sure that you are sticking with what the students need and what the objectives or the goals for the lesson or the unit are. Thank you. Now let's talk about how to successfully implement student choice in the classroom. So ideally, when you have choices for your students, you can keep it easy and simple to 2-3 choices. Easy on the teacher to plan and keep track of, not too overwhelming for the students to pick from. Also, very important, I mentioned that earlier, is that we do not need to have a choice for everything. This organizer here might be very helpful to you all in terms of planning and implementing student choice. So you start from your goal or objectives or what students need to be better at. Maybe they need to get better at reading or writing, or maybe more specifically, they need to get better with their spelling or summarizing or making presentations. After you identify the goal or objectives, then you think of what you usually do in your class for that objective. And then you think of some choices you can include based on the language proficiency, the interest or hobbies, the reason or motivation to learn English, and the preference of how to work. So let's see how this looks in action. So step 1, you know your students very well, and I could tell that from the comments. And here again, on this slide, you have some details about my 8th graders. So think of your students, their language levels, motivations, and your objective. So you have the objective. Now think of an activity. what do you usually do for this lesson? Well, for this objective, which is present tense simple in writing, I usually ask students to write a recipe for a favorite dish or meal. So I added that to the organizer here. Step 3, then I decide I want to give them some choice in terms of interest. So I come up with this list of 3 options. Write a recipe for a favorite meal and dish, which was my original activity. And then I added, write instructions of how to build a wooden car and write directions to get from home to the art museum or to school. So now it's your turn. Think of your classroom. I have shared with you here a goal, which is making predictions using future tense simple, and the activity I usually do for this goal. Predict what the text is about based on the title. Can you add 1 to similar activities so we have 2, 3 choices for the students? We can easily pick preference. And I have examples for you on the next slide. So for preference, I can give them a choice to work alone or with a partner. If I pick interest, maybe they make predictions about 3 different texts, 1 about soccer, 1 about art, and 1 about cars. So think of your classroom. You can use the same objective and activity. Can you think of 2, 3 choices for your students? You can think of taking into account language interest, motivation, or preference. I want to hear some student choice activities that you would plan for this lesson. I'm curious.
Yes, I'm curious too, everybody. So based on the goal or objective of making predictions using future tense simple and the activity of making predictions of what the text is about, Elena and I would love to hear what types of choices would you make? So for example, language level, interest, motivation, or preference. We'd love for you to share an example of a choice that you provide for students in this activity. We'd love to hear from you. So Elena, let's give everybody a moment to think. We've got a nice comment coming in from Sarika saying, "Oh, being a foodie, it's very difficult to talk about choices." I love the sense of humor of our audience. So yeah, everybody, again, what are some choices that you would make? So please let us know in the chats. Let's see, Elena, we've got Nushab Wagan saying that the choices would be focused on preferences. We have Nishva Rapir saying that they would write about maybe a future trip. Some other teachers are saying about incorporating art, talking about this, some comments. The menu style strategy is a really cool way. I agree too. Other teachers are saying, "Hey, Elena, this is awesome. I can't wait to try this menu style. It's really easy to think about activities, materials to help develop." And as far as topics, we say one teacher is saying, we have Jafrane Hosseini saying, if students who are intrigued by football or soccer, you can ask them to predict who might win the next World Cup. Ooh, I like that. I think the next World Cup is here in the United States too. We're all excited for that. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, lots of people are saying about preparation, future conferences, talking about the future. So lots of great choices. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes, thank you all for sharing. I hope this organizer and these steps I shared with you help in planning student choice in your classroom. So you planned and have your choices. How do you share them with the students? Remember, you do not need to have a choice for everything, and you can stick to 2, 3 choices to make it manageable for everyone. You can have the choices displayed or written on a blackboard or whiteboard or projected on the overhead projector at the front of the classroom. You can also have each choice on a piece of paper and place them in different spots in the room so the students can go to one of the choices. I also thought, since I have been using choices for some time now in the classroom, to share some tips with you all. The more you plan and implement choices in the classroom, the easiest will be for you, and the better will the students be at knowing what you expect from them. You will be even more successful at planning choices if you learn or know about your students, what they like, what they're passionate about, why they're learning English, which other places besides the classroom they use or are exposed to English. Do not try to have a choice for every single thing in your classroom. Start small with maybe incorporating student choice once a week, and then work your way up to more often. Sometimes your curriculum or school context does not give you lots of room for student choices. So it is important to know that, so you are able to offer choices where you can. If after this session you want to learn more about student choice, you can use the word choice or use the term differentiation when you do your research. Choice is part of differentiation, and Dr. Carol Tomlinson at the University of Virginia is an expert in differentiation. I learned a lot from her when I was a student there, and this presentation today is based on her work. Also, something to remember, when we give student choices, we can and we should keep in mind that the choices need to have the same objectives or goals. The choices are different paths or options or a roadmap to your goals or objectives. Remember our first two pictures that we looked at, right? We all will end up eating lunch, but we'll all get different foods based on our preferences, cultures, diets. I might get a steak and a salad. My friend might get a soup with the bread. Or you can choose the stairs or the ramp to reach the top. Based on your preferences or your ability, you might choose the stairs or the ramp. So I hope this slide reminds you all of some important takeaways related to student choice. And these are some things that you're walking away with after today's session. So your turn, one last time today. Now that you know more about why and how to implement student choice in your classroom, do you think you can plan for student choice more often? Why or why not? I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, everybody, let us know in the chat. What are your big takeaways from today's session, which was awesome, Elena? Lots of people are just saying thank you so much for a great session. But before or after I look for their comments, if you don't mind, can I share an example with you, Elena? One of my takeaways?
Yeah.
So I love this menu style, and I think I will start small, like you suggested, with just some student choices. And I definitely am going to incorporate and use that menu style with the main dish and side dish. Maybe two side dishes. I'm not sure yet, but I'll see how it goes. And then we'll see, as you said, dessert as an option. So I'm thinking of my students, and I really think that they would like to have some choices in what they do in the classroom. So that's what I'm really motivated to do. And I'll just share a couple of comments from our audience, their big takeaways. People just love the menu style. They think it's a great way, an easy way. It simplifies how to make choices and to give general ideas about choices. Just getting lots of gratitude towards you. People just saying, thank you so much. I love this. It's going to make my classes more engaging, making my students more autonomous. So lots of great comments. So everybody, please keep commenting. Let us know. We'll try to get back to them later. But yeah, lots of great comments. Everyone's super happy about your presentation today, Elena.
Yes, thank you all for sharing, and I hope this was useful and that you are and feel more prepared now to plan some student choice in the classroom.
That's great.
And these were our objective today, which I hope we reached.
I think so. We certainly did.
And on the next slide, I have references related to the topic of student choice and differentiation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elena. Yeah, just lots of people commenting, very informative session, praiseworthy indeed. So thank you so much, everybody. Elena, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing several practical, engaging ideas for effectively implementing student choice. I know I really enjoyed it. And so thank you. Thank you so much, Elena. And of course, to our wonderful audience, we'd also like to thank you for your awesome engagement and participation today. You guys are the best. So please continue to share your ideas through social media or with your viewing groups after this session ends. So now you all have an opportunity to receive a digital badge from our team here at American English for Educators. So please follow the link listed here. It's on the screen. It should also be shared. Remember, you will have to complete a short quiz and you must answer 2 out of 3 questions correctly in order to receive your digital badge. And you can only enter your information 1 time. So please take your time and make sure that you read each question carefully. You should receive your badge through an email within about a week. So once again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you at our next American English Live webinar series on February 14th for our next session. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
We hope that you are completing your quizzes now in order to receive a digital badge for attending today's session. If you've already completed your quiz and you'd like to continue to consider today's topic, please use the following reflection questions to do so. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you on February 14th for our next session, Fostering Academic Collaboration for English Language Learners with Erin Carlson.